The racist slur cut through the music like a knife. 40,000 people went silent. Ace Frehley stood frozen on stage, the insult hanging in the air. But before anyone could react, Ozzy Osbourne stopped the entire concert and did something that made headlines around the world. What happened next at Monsters of Rock 1984 became a defining moment in music history. June 16, 1984. Castle Donington, England. The Monsters of Rock Festival was in full swing, and the energy was massive. This wasn't just another rock festival, this was the rock festival, the biggest metal gathering in Europe. 45,000 people packed into that field, ready to lose their minds to some of the heaviest music on the planet. Ozzy Osbourne was headlining, and he'd brought Ace Frehley along as a special guest. It made sense. They were brothers at this point, 8 years of friendship forged through chaos, addiction, and survival. When Ozzy's management had asked if he wanted a surprise guest for the European leg, there'd been no question. Ace was coming. The crowd was massive and diverse. Fans from all over Europe, England, Germany, France, Spain, even some who'd traveled from Eastern Europe despite the Cold War, making that incredibly difficult. Metalheads, punk rockers, regular people who just loved loud music. It was supposed to be a celebration of rock and roll bringing people together. But not everyone there that day came with good intentions. The show had been going strong for about an hour. Ozzy had ripped through Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, Flying High Again, all the classics. The crowd was in a frenzy, that perfect storm of beer, adrenaline, and pure rock energy. When Ozzy announced Ace as his special guest, the place erupted even louder. Ace walked out carrying his Gibson Les Paul, grinning that crooked grin, and the crowd went insane. Even in England, even without the Kiss makeup, everyone knew who the spaceman was. They launched into Iron Man, and the sound was absolutely crushing. Ace's guitar work added this whole extra dimension to the song, and you could see Ozzy feeding off it, both of them locked in. Somewhere in the crowd, about 30 rows back, there was a group of guys who'd been drinking since noon. Not the fun kind of drunk, the aggressive, looking for trouble kind. They'd been causing problems all day, getting into fights, harassing women, generally being the kind of assholes that every venue dreads. Their ringleader was a guy named Colin, mid-20s, shaved head, covered in crude tattoos, the kind of person who wore his hatred like a badge of honor. He was a National Front supporter, one of those far-right extremists who'd infiltrated the metal scene in the early 80s, trying to co-opt the music for their racist agenda. Colin had been fine when it was just Ozzy on stage, but when Ace came out, something shifted. Ace Frehley is Italian-American, with darker features that, to Colin's twisted mind, made him other. It didn't matter that Ace was one of the greatest guitarists who'd ever lived, that he'd helped define rock and roll for a generation. To Colin, he didn't belong. They were about halfway through Iron Man, right at the guitar solo section where Ace was supposed to shine. The sound was massive, the crowd was going wild, and then it happened. During a brief moment when the music pulled back slightly, just before the solo exploded, Colin's voice cut through everything. He screamed a racial slur. The specific word doesn't matter because all racial slurs carry the same poison, but it was ugly, hateful, and loud enough that people in a 20-foot radius heard it clearly. The immediate area around Colin went quiet first. People turned, shocked, trying to figure out who'd said it. Some looked angry, others uncomfortable. A few tried to move away, not wanting to be associated with that kind of hate. But more importantly, the band heard it. Ace's hands froze mid-solo, just stopped, fingers hovering over the fretboard. His face, normally so animated when he played, went completely blank. That insult had reached him, cut through the music and the crowd noise, and landed like a punch to the gut. The other musicians faltered. When your lead guitarist suddenly stops playing in the middle of a solo, everyone notices. The drummer lost the rhythm for a beat. The bassist looked around, confused, and Ozzy, who'd been singing, realized something was very wrong. The music died completely. 45,000 people went from screaming to dead silent in about 3 seconds. That kind of instant hush where everyone knows something serious just happened, but most don't know what. Ace stood there, guitar hanging from his strap, looking out into the crowd. His expression was complex: hurt, anger, resignation. Like this wasn't the first time he had dealt with this kind of hate, but it never got easier. Security was already moving, trying to locate the source of the disturbance, but they were too far away, and the crowd was too packed. Finding one asshole in 45,000 people isn't easy, especially when his buddies were starting to laugh and egg him on. Ozzy had heard it too. He'd been around enough to recognize the particular silence that follows something like that, the collective intake of breath, the tension. He looked at Ace, saw his friend's face, and understood immediately what had happened. For a second, Ozzy had a choice. He could pretend he didn't hear it, signal the band to keep playing, let security handle it quietly. That would be the professional thing to do, the thing that wouldn't disrupt the show or risk controversy. Most artists would have made that choice, but Ozzy wasn't most artists. He walked over to Ace and put his hand on his friend's shoulder. "You all right?" he asked, off mic. Ace nodded, but his jaw was tight. "Yeah, just some asshole being an asshole." "Not anymore," Ozzy said. He turned to face the crowd and grabbed the microphone. "Hold up," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "Hold the fuck up." The crowd stirred, confused. This wasn't part of the show. Someone just shouted something. I heard it. Ace heard it. Everyone around that person heard it. A racial slur. Directed at my friend here, Ozzy pointed to Ace. "And I've got something to say about that." You could feel the tension ratchet up. 45,000 people were suddenly paying very close attention. "I don't know who said it," Ozzy continued. "Don't know where you are in this crowd. But I'm going to talk to you anyway, and everyone else is going to hear it too." He paused, letting that sink in. "Rock and roll doesn't have room for that shit. You hear me? It doesn't matter where you're from, what color your skin is, who you love, or what God you pray to. If you're here for the music, you're welcome. If you're here to spread hate, you can fuck right off." The crowd's response was mixed. Most people started cheering. They got it. They supported it. But there were pockets of silence, too. Uncomfortable spaces where people weren't sure how to react. "Ace Frehley," Ozzy said, turning to gesture at his friend, "is one of the greatest guitar players who's ever lived. He's my brother. He's been my brother for 8 years. And if you've got a problem with him being on this stage, then you've got a problem with me." Ace looked uncomfortable with the attention, but also grateful. You could see it in his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen," Ozzy announced. "Security's going to find whoever shouted that, and they're going to remove you, not just from this show, but from this festival, permanently. You don't get to be part of this." He turned to face the security team at the side of the stage. "Find them. I don't care how long it takes. We're not playing another note until they're gone." This was unprecedented. Stopping a show at a major festival, refusing to continue, demanding action. This could have gone badly in so many ways. The promoters could have been furious. The crowd could have turned on him. His career could have taken a hit. But Ozzy didn't care. His brother had been disrespected, and he was drawing a line. Security moved into the crowd. They'd gotten a general location from where the sound had come from. People in that area, most of whom were pissed about what had been said, started pointing. Within 2 minutes, they'd identified Colin and his group. The extraction wasn't pretty. Colin and his friends resisted, tried to start a fight, but security outnumbered them, and more importantly, the people around them helped. Other fans, sick of these assholes, literally helped push them toward security. What could have been a dangerous situation became something almost beautiful, a community rejecting hate from within. The entire extraction took about 7 minutes. 7 minutes of 45,000 people watching security drag out a group of racists while the band stood on stage, waiting. Most festival crowds would have gotten impatient, started booing or leaving. But this crowd understood what was happening. They were witnessing something important. When security gave Ozzy the signal that the troublemakers were gone, he grabbed the mic again. "They're out." "Good. Now let me say one more thing before we get back to the music." The crowd quieted down to listen. "I grew up in Birmingham. Working class, dirt poor. My whole life, people told me I was nothing, that I'd never amount to anything. And you know what? The people who helped me, who believed in me, who gave me chances, they came from everywhere. Different colors, different countries, different backgrounds. If I'd only accepted help from people who looked like me, I'd still be working in a slaughterhouse. He paused, his voice getting emotional. Ace came to this country to play music with me, to share his talent with you, and some ignorant bastard tried to make him feel unwelcome because of how he looks. That's not rock and roll. That's not what we're about. We're about bringing people together, not tearing them apart. The crowd was cheering now, really cheering. Not polite applause, but a roar of agreement. So here's my promise to all of you, Ozzy continued. Anytime I'm on stage, anywhere in the world, this is what happens. You bring hate, you get kicked out. You bring racism, homophobia, any of that garbage, you're gone. This is a safe space for everyone who loves music. Everyone. No exceptions. The roar got louder. People were jumping, screaming their approval. This wasn't just about one incident anymore. This was about what kind of community they wanted to be. Ozzy turned to Ace. You good to keep going, brother? Ace nodded. His expression had changed. He looked moved, emotional. Yeah, Oz. Let's do this. They launched back into Iron Man, but the energy was different now, more intense, more meaningful. When Ace hit that guitar solo, the one that had been interrupted, it was like he was playing with renewed fire. This wasn't just a performance anymore. It was a statement. The rest of the set was incredible. When they closed with Paranoid, the entire field sang along so loudly it probably could be heard in the next county. But they weren't just singing the lyrics. They were singing an anthem of unity, of refusing to let hate poison something beautiful. After the show backstage, things got interesting. The festival promoters approached Ozzy and he braced for a fight, but instead the head promoter shook his hand. That was brilliant, he said. Exactly what needed to happen. We've been trying to keep those National Front bastards out of these festivals for years. What you did today, making that stand so publicly, it sends a message, good, Ozzy said, because I meant every word. The story made international news. In 1984, this was big. A major rock star stopping a festival set to confront racism wasn't normal. Some older, more conservative media outlets criticized Ozzy for bringing politics into music. But the rock press, the fans, and other artists overwhelmingly supported him. Ace gave an interview a week later where he talked about what it meant to him. I've dealt with that kind of thing my whole career, he said. Usually, you just ignore it, push through. But having Ozzy stop everything, refuse to continue until it was dealt with, that meant everything. He put his career, his reputation, everything on the line for me. That's what brotherhood looks like. The incident sparked a larger conversation in the rock community about racism in metal. Other festivals started implementing stricter anti-hate policies. Bands started speaking out more. The message was clear. Hate isn't metal, and it's not welcome. Years later, Rock Against Racism organizers credited that Monsters of Rock moment as a turning point. Ozzy could have stayed silent, one organizer said. Most people do. But he used his platform, his privilege, to stand up for what's right, and he did it at personal and professional risk. That's real allyship. When Ozzy died in 2025, Ace's tribute at the funeral included this story. June 16, 1984, Ace said, his voice thick with emotion. The day my brother showed me what courage looks like. He didn't have to do what he did. He could have kept the show going, avoided controversy. But he chose me over all of that. He chose what was right over what was easy. He paused, looking at Ozzy's photo. I carry that day with me. Every time I face adversity, every time I see injustice, I think about Ozzy stopping that show, about him drawing that line. And I try to do the same. That's his legacy. Not just the music, but the courage to stand up when it matters. The Monsters of Rock moment became legendary. It's taught in classes about music and social justice. It's referenced in books about allyship and standing up to racism. And it's remembered by everyone who was there as the day rock and roll showed what it was really about. Because music isn't just about the sound. It's about the community we build, the values we uphold, the stands we take. And on June 16, 1984, Ozzy Osbourne showed 45,000 people what those values should be. He stopped the show. He called out the hate. He refused to continue until it was dealt with. And in doing so, he didn't just defend his friend, he defended the soul of rock and roll itself. That's what brothers do. That's what legends do. That's what happens when you choose courage over convenience. The racist got kicked out. The show went on. And the message rang clear. Hate isn't welcome here. Not on this stage, not in this crowd, not in this community. Rock and roll chose a side that day, and it chose right.